The first thing that you need to do is make sure you're only working on the most important things. Now, this sounds really obvious, but it's all too easy to overlook it. I've certainly been guilty of this myself in the past, and I see a lot of other musicians do this, where there are so many things we could work on. We want to do all of them. They all seem so important or exciting, and we dilute our focus and we spend a whole lot of time either just not getting so far because we're spread thin, or we're just working on this wide variety of things. And a couple of them maybe are really important for moving us towards where we want to get to, and the others are frankly, we could get a lot better at them and it's not really doing much good for ourselves. This is just a key thing to making more progress in less practice time, is being really specific about which are the most important topics for you to practice that are going to get you furthest. The time you spend on those is hugely valuable and moves you forward really fast. Moving forward is only if you're going in the right direction, if you're going towards where you want to get to. I could be working on some other stuff. If it improves my music, but it's not towards the thing that I'm aiming for, then that doesn't actually move me forward much. Now, there's an obvious thing in here which is stated but not explicitly, which is, as part of this, you need to know, well, what is it that I'm trying to get to? What is the vision of where I want to be? I'm not going to go into that in detail now, but without that, you are not going to get great results from less practice time, because that's what you've got to have if you're going to really be the most effective in making your progress. Hey friends, Mark Morley-Fletcher here, and welcome back to the channel. And I'm going to be throwing out a lot of different ideas here about things that you can do to make more progress in less practice time. But one thing to be aware of is that this is kind of like giving you a whole toolbox of different tools that you can use. And that doesn't mean that you have to, or indeed even should, use all of them. Because, for some people, some of them will be more appropriate than others. And also, just trying to use everything all at once is often not a good way to do it. So lots of ideas are going to be coming out in here. See the ones that make most sense to you, pick the ones that seem most useful to you and go with those, and don't worry about trying to implement everything. And the other thing that I'm going to say is, because I am throwing out lots of different ideas here, I'm not going to go hugely deep into any single one of them. So if there is something that you see that actually you'd like a much more detailed video on, then let me know in the comments below and maybe I'll do that for you. So we talked about the importance of working on just only the most important things for you if you really want to improve quickly in less time. But there are some other big picture things, if you like, that are relevant here as well. Just big ideas about how you practice that can, or how you organize your practice that can make a big difference. So let's just think about some of those. One of them is focus. If you're really focused and concentrating in a practice session, you're going to get much more out of that session than if you're distracted or just going through the motions. So that's one thing to make sure you're doing. Another is actually, what do you do after a practice session? May or may not be practical for you, but there is research showing that taking a deliberate break where you're not thinking about stuff after a practice session, this could be a nap, this could be a little meditative thing, sometimes it's even just going for a walk, not thinking about stuff, or it could just be sitting down for 5 minutes and letting your mind wander. That has actually been shown to increase the learning that you get. Because basically what happens is the change in your brain actually occurs after you practice. There are all these chemicals that come out while you're practicing in response to what you're doing. And it's the period after you practice where that then gets coalesced into forming new brain circuits or strengthening existing circuits. So if you can, just taking some time out after the practice session to nap or relax or whatever it is actually going to mean you get more from the practice that you do. Another thing, not too dissimilar, is just think about how do you structure your practice on a regular basis? Because it turns out that practicing little and often is going to give you more results, better results, than the same amount of time spent practicing, but all in one block. So you're much better off doing half an hour a day than, say, 3.5, 4 hours at the weekend, once a week. same amount of practice time, but you get more from it. And indeed, you might even get benefits like that from splitting up stuff during the day into a few separate sessions rather than trying to do one huge block all in one go. And again, related to that, breaks within sessions can be really good as well. So now let's look at some actual specific tactics that you can use in a practice session that are going to help you get more out of it. And one of these is to do what's known as interleaved practice rather than blocked practice. So what does this mean? Block practice is when you're working on a topic and you're just sticking to that topic or that exercise and you're doing it again and again and again in a big block. So if I'm practicing one bar from a piece, the way that I do that in terms of block practice is I would play that bar and I would play that bar and I would play that bar again and again and again, all in a big block. And this can feel like you're making great progress. Often in the moment, you see definite improvements. But actually, in the long term, it's been shown that interleaved practice tends to work better. So interleaved practice is when rather than having everything in one block, you're working on a few different things and you split them up. So if I'm working on, let's say, 3 different bars from a piece, rather than doing the blocks where maybe I spend 10 minutes practicing bar 1, 10 minutes practicing bar 2, 10 minutes practicing bar 3, so that's 3 separate blocks, what I might do is I might practice bar 1 twice, then bar 2 a couple of times, then bar 3 a couple of times, then back to bar 1, a few from bar 2, some from bar 3, and moving around this. So I'm never doing it all in one block, but I'm interleaving things. Now, not going to go into a huge amount of detail in this here, but this will often feel slower in the moment. You don't feel like you're making as much progress within the practice session, but a week later, a month later, or as you do these things, you actually make far faster progress. So this is going to help you get more progress in less time. And the next thing that you need to do to make faster progress is to like this video. Okay, obviously not actually going to help with that. I would love a world where that is possible. But if you're enjoying what I'm saying, if you're finding it useful, then I would be really grateful if you take a moment to just click like, and it helps the video spread to more people who will hopefully find it useful as well. Thanks. Okay, next one then is micro breaks in practice sessions. This is a really interesting one, and there seems to be some research coming out on this pretty recently. So we talked about taking breaks, deliberate breaks after practice sessions. Similar thing on a much, much smaller scale seems to work within practice sessions. So I think we're still unclear on the exact details of what's best for this, but the experiment that was done that I've seen is getting people to practice 10 seconds practicing something, then literally just take a 10-second break, very short break, not doing anything, then another 10 seconds practice, and 10 seconds break, and so on. And this resulted in better learning, which is great. But what's really interesting is the research they did into what was actually going on here. So they were able to scan people's brains while they were practicing and during the little 10-second breaks. And what happens is they found that the neurons in the brain were replaying the physical activities, what had happened in those practice sessions. So in the breaks, the neural circuits were replaying what they had just practiced, but in the breaks they were replaying it 20 times faster. So it's not exactly the same as doing the physical practice, but you're getting many, many more repetitions when you just take a little break and give your brain a chance to kind of, just review the game footage, if you like, just go back over the video of what you've just done. So that can be a really great way of just getting a little bit more from the same amount of practice time. So at this point, I think it's worth just considering, do you actually really want to take this approach? How far do you want to go down this path of totally optimizing just how much can you get out of less and less practice time? Or looking at it the other way, if you want to keep doing the same amount of practice time, can you get more and more out of it? And I think it's great to think about this, but just be aware of the dangers of taking it to extremes. Because like I said, there's a lot of tools here. And if you try and use all of them because you're obsessed with getting the absolute maximum that you can out of things, there is a danger that you do none of them well. And or when some of them aren't possible, you start to get a bit disappointed and think, well, this is not as effective as it could be. And that can actually sometimes get in the way of giving you the progress that you want. But there's another thing here, which I think is there's a chance that you lose sight of the bigger picture, because practice, at the end of the day, it's always all about helping you to play better music. It is not practice for itself. It is not improving technique for its own sake. It is about, this is helping me do something else, which is to play great music. And if you ever get caught up too much in the how do I make more how do I make practice more effective, then sometimes you can lose sight of that, and it can all be about, am I doing the most effective optimized practice? Am I using all these clever techniques? And that can take you away from the focus on the musical side of things. What am I trying to do here? How do I communicate these emotions, these ideas to someone else? So not saying that you shouldn't do this, but just be aware that there can be drawbacks, as with everything, as with anything, if you get a little bit too obsessive and you try and take something to its extremes. So next things for faster progress. And a really helpful one is to plan out your practice sessions in advance, because when you know exactly what you're going to work on, you get into your practice session, you are within seconds straight away becoming productive, doing useful work. When you're not sure, if you just start a practice session, you think, right, I've got 10 minutes or half an hour or whatever it is, what shall I work on? That wastes a little bit of time at the start, but you're just that less certain about what you're doing. And so it will actually probably be a little bit less effective itself, as in the first case with the plan, you are totally focused, you're totally certain, this is what I'm doing, it's really effective. Whereas you go in and you're trying to make it up as you go along or decide as you do it, it's just that little bit less specific. And so having a plan as you go in can really help your sessions be effective in the same time or in less time. And another thing that I want you to consider, again, just another tool in the toolbox, see if it works for you, is the environment that you're practicing in. So we talked earlier about just making sure that you're focused when you practice, and that can be around just having that intention. It can be around the timing that you practice for, so you don't lose focus in longer sessions. It can be around what time of day makes things easiest for you to concentrate. But your environment also plays a huge part in this. So things such as, is your practice space really cluttered? If there's 5 different bits of music around there that you're going to be working on at different times, that's potentially going to distract your attention when you're only working on one of them, as opposed to if you've got a very clear space and the only thing there is the thing that you're working on. It can be things such as mobile phone, other things that you have open or notifications on. Do those things, those noises, those distractions come in and take you away from your focus? So just think about, can you change your environment so that it is more conducive to you being uninterrupted and undistracted? And then again, you'll get much more results in shorter time. Now, these are all ways of doing it within what I guess I call a pretty normal practice framework. But you might like to consider taking a completely different approach. So maybe check out my video on an unusual way to learn music faster next. And if you'd like the special practice and performance tips that I only share with subscribers, then head on over to playinthezone.com and sign up for the emails. They're free. I've been Morley-Fletcher. Thanks so much for watching. Take care, and I'll see you in the next video.